So now I'm going to invite Alice Vilma to join us on the stage for Morgan Stanley, and we are going to get right to it. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about what Morgan Stanley is doing.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, everyone.
Welcome. So why don't we start out? We had a great conversation the other day and really just wanted to talk a little bit about the concept of inclusive innovation. I know that's what you've been working on for the last number of years. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about yourself to start, and then we'll talk a little bit about inclusive innovation and how that's changing what we do here in the startup world.
Perfect. I'll try to get all my points out in 20-ish minutes because I could do this literally for the rest of the day. So I'm Alice Vilma. I'm a managing director at Morgan Stanley. I am also the co-portfolio manager of the Next Level Fund and co-head of the Multicultural Innovation Lab. And those two concepts are something that we're all very proud of. The Innovation Lab is our in-house accelerator for tech and tech-enabled companies with a founder of color or woman. And then the Next Level Fund builds on the next stage, if you will, of next level, pun intended, of the Innovation Lab, and that is a full fund, early stage fund that's investing in founders of color and women. We're investing at the Series A plus level, so anywhere between kind of A and C, but we will look at post-seed companies, and then in the Innovation Lab, we're looking at kind of seed Series A companies. In the Innovation Lab, it's Morgan Stanley balance sheet. We're putting $250,000 to work for each of the participants that comes in. We run 2 cohorts a year, and we provide the same thing that any other accelerator would in terms of curriculum, content, connections, in addition to capital. We're using the Morgan Stanley platform to help accelerate businesses so that these founders are able to get ready for the next round of funding in a commercial way. And for the Next Level Fund, what we noticed was there was still a gap with companies that get early stage funding, but then need funding around Series A, that first institutional money that comes in. And so alongside our partners, Walmart, Hearst, Microsoft, and Morgan Stanley, hello, and then a large family office in the healthcare space, we are able to not only invest the capital, but use our partners' platforms in addition to our own, again, commercially, to help accelerate the businesses of these founders and achieve return.
That's great. So in terms of, inclusive innovation, what do you think's fueled the need for this in the industry to date so far?
So it's really interesting. So I will take the story that I gave you and spend it over probably 30 minutes and shoot your ear off and try to do this in, very soundbite forms. But over the past, so the lab has been in existence since 2017. We did our first cohort there, and we've invested in 70 companies to date. What we noticed when we began to think about how Morgan Stanley could make a difference in this space was we took it from the highest level. How come we don't see, the question was really, how come we don't see more CEOs who are of color and women kind of at the Fortune 500 level, the companies that we normally do business with, the IPOs that we take public? Like, why aren't we necessarily seeing some proportional type of representation at these levels? Because the idea is, how do we make the connections and relationships to do more business with multicultural individuals? So that was kind of like the question, like, why don't we see this? And so we said, it must exist somewhere. Parity must exist somewhere. So we start to just take a look. So, okay, it's not here at the Fortune 500 level. It's not at the large cap equity level. It's not private equity. It's not at the middle market stage. It's not the small cap stage. It's not the growth VC stage. And then you just keep going down the line. And then parity existed where? At the very, very beginning. So much like you've heard other investors say, opportunities, or I would say ability, is not necessarily skewed, but the opportunity to take an idea or platform and grow that is skewed. And a lot of that is because networks are closed and et cetera, et cetera. And so when we think about what that actually means in terms of doing business, in terms of being productive, in terms of opening up the pie and allowing for, quite frankly, more business, we said, oh, I think we're missing an entire opportunity here. And so we actually wrote a research paper on it. It was called the $1 Trillion Opportunity, which is if we just funded businesses in the same way, or founders in the same way as we are proportionally here in the United States from a demographic perspective, we were looking at something of like $4 trillion in addition to GDP. Now, people have built on that research, and the number can go up to like 20. And so there's a real business aspect here. And so we said, okay, this is interesting. So we're going to do something to begin to move founders through these pipes. We can do more business because as a relationship-oriented company, we will have built these relationships when they needed them the most. So when these companies grow, we will grow with them. And then obviously we get to level the playing field. And so that was how this started. And so when you think about inclusive innovation and kind of, why it's come about and how it's come about and what we can do about it, that was really the genesis of how we began with the lab and now the fund.
That's awesome. That's good to hear that. So do you know of other companies in the space that are following in your footsteps? I mean, this is really a newer thing in large industry. I know a few companies are doing it, but are you collaborating with others to sort of spread the word?
So this is like where I start to, twiddle my fingers. We were so excited to get this done. Morgan Stanley was really the first to pioneer an effort that was solely focused on this thesis. We had other organizations, Techstars, Y Combinator, et cetera. They would do, for lack of a better term, the women's cohort, the Black cohort. It's like, we can't find these founders. It was like, yeah, because they don't want to be second stage, right? They want to be main stage. And so you don't want to be the best of the other, you want to be the best. And so we said, we're not going to do that. We're just going to have something that's in this space. And so we were the first to do it. And since we've done that, we've seen other companies in our space, UBS, obviously, Goldman has done stuff, JP Morgan, et cetera. And we're actually Bank of America. And so we're actually happy about that because that's the point. We're trying to do what we can, but we hope it can, begin to scale up so that we can begin to, again, level the playing field. That being said, there's also corporates who are now saying, oh, here's a model by which we can kind of do something, okay? And they've taken different approaches to it. So maybe folks are doing accelerators or a lot more now, and we definitely work with some of our corporate clients in the accelerator. And obviously, we have corporate clients who have who are LPs in our fund. And so I think there's more of an effort around, okay, what else can we do? Okay, we've got direct investments, we're gonna do fund investments, emerging manager investments. So this space has really exploded in a way that really makes my heart sing, quite frankly. And I love to see it. I don't think of it as competitive.
That's great. I love to hear that it is not needing to be competitive. One of the things that we also talked a little bit about in our earlier conversation was just, what are some of the things that the industry collectively needs to be working on in order to remove some of that structural exclusion, some of those things that we all know get in the way of women accessing capital, founders of color, veteran founders, because frankly, those are some of the things that are really important, is to tackle some of that early on things that have been embedded in the systems.
You keep setting me up, Sarah. So we wrote another research paper on this, which was around how do we, I don't want to say break the cycle, but how do we open up the aperture and become more inclusive? And so what we've seen and what I've seen, obviously, in the work that I do is networks are closed not because people are malicious. Networks are closed because at the end of the day, the VC business is a 1 or 0 business for the most part. And so when you've got fresh money and I've got money and I need to kind of look like the next guy or the benchmark guy purposely said here, but if I need to look like that benchmark guy, then I need to have investments that look like that. And how did those investments look? Who are these founders? Where'd they go to school, et cetera? I kind of want to do that because cash is the commodity. And so my LPs will take money out of my fund and put it into that guy's fund. And so I need to look like that. And so when that is done over and over and over again, you have a network that's relatively closed. On top of that, folks' internal networks, like your personal networks, you may want to look at them, they might be homogeneous, right? And so if I think about investing in 2 people, the Black neuroscientist or the Black female neuroscientist or the white male neuroscientist, and I'm a white male, and I can just pick up the phone and in 3 calls get to kind of diligence on this person, but I can't necessarily get to diligence on this person. Same company, same risk. Ty's going to go to the folks that I can get in touch with and understand who this is. Because in the early stage space, it's all about the entrepreneur. And when you think about due diligence, should something go wrong with the black female neuroscientist, who I don't really know and can't really get to, but I'm going to take a flyer. Someone's going to say, well, did you do your diligence? It's like, are you an idiot? And so nobody wants to, so investors are just as scared, quite frankly, as everybody else, even more so because they've got other people's money, to take that kind of risk. So what do we do about that? Well, we've got the lab. So you would be surprised at how many investors we speak to now. They're like, let us see your founders, because they've been vetted. Right? There's a source here. You can open up. I can actually break this pattern matching because I want to diversify, but I don't want to take that risk. Morgan Stanley has stamped some of these founders, so let's look at them. You can also diversify your own ranks. And so that's what we've also seen. So you say, okay, let's put a, black female partner, let's get black male partners, let's get women partners, et cetera. Because there, if we think that networks are homogeneous, well then I'll get into their networks, and those are probably going to be high quality networks as well. And so we've written different ways to attack this, and those are some of the ways to do it.
That's great. So what do you think, one of the things that is interesting listening to you talk is, I'm curious to know what differentiates you from what others are doing in this particular space. Because obviously, if I'm a venture capitalist and I see that you vetted something that has the stamp of approval, I'm definitely going to be intrigued about that. But why is Morgan Stanley different?
Oh, man. I'll take it from 2 different angles. So from the lab space, from the fund space, the next level fund is different because we have the relationships that most VCs want when they want to exit their companies. And so these companies already have a look, and they're helping the companies that are coming to the portfolio. They're vetting. It's actually a win-win for everybody. And if it's time to exit, well, there may be a preferred relationship there. So it's almost like captive return. It's almost a little bit too easy. So that's really the difference. And that's what founders see. So founders are like, oh, I'm a retail company, and Walmart is your LP, and you want to talk to us. Got it. We've never had a problem yet. Which is good. Right. I'm happy to hear that. So that part is good. So that's what makes us different in that respect. From the lab perspective, again, as well, it's using the breadth and depth of the relationships we have in the relationship business. There really aren't people we can't get to within 1 or 2 calls. And it's really funny because I'll give you a quick story. One of our portfolio companies is in the retail space, and she wanted to do something with Rihanna. And she was like, it'd be awesome if we could do XYZ with Rihanna, the Fenty Savage brands. I was like, okay, that's cool. And the next day I called her up and I was like, get your presentation together, talk to my banker, we're going to send it in to the co-president. She's like, what? And I was like, that's what we do. So that's what makes us a little bit different, which is a huge competitive advantage.
Yeah, that's great. So how do founders find out about you, and how do they get access to the program? Because I know there are a number of them in the room today, and they're probably really curious about.
Shameless plug time. www.morganstanley.com. I think it's /MCIL. It might be /, so don't hold that against me. / or /, but MCIL, Multicultural Innovation Lab. And the Next Level Fund, same thing, www.morganstanley / or / Next Level Fund. And so you can find out about both there. But you can also hit me up. I'll be here for another 30 minutes or so. You can reach me out on LinkedIn. Generally pretty accessible.
That's great. Thank you. And you talked a little bit more about some of the research that you've done. I'm really intrigued by what you were talking about, that you had a real business case for why this is so important to be able to increase the pipeline of multicultural and diverse people in the business world. So talk a little bit about some of the research and maybe share a couple success stories as well.
So the research that we've done is really around this notion of inclusive investing, again, being good for business. And so we're thinking about increasing the pie, making the pie much bigger, not taking, careful, Okay. Not taking a bigger slice of a pie. And so when we talk about some of, and we just believe this fundamentally, some of the ills of society, et cetera, is because not enough people are being productive, period. And so this exists within demographics in terms of, women, founders of color, veterans, LGBT. So folks want to be included kind of in this productivity space, but we also talk about startups being kind of the number one creator of jobs. We talk about economic development. We've talked about, and Anna was here yesterday, and she was at Rise of the Rest, but even Steve Case's thesis around capital and startups not necessarily need to be on the coast. You can start to rejuvenate communities. You bring people and make people more productive, and everyone does better. The whole country does better. We produce more. We're operating at a different level. If you think about that in terms of competition, global macroeconomic implications and political implications, et cetera, it's just good for business. And so why wouldn't we want to do that? And so our research really started with, here is what the future can look like if we all are just producing at our proportionate kind of contributions to the population. And so if folks can get funding, this is the type of output that would happen. That research has been amplified, and those numbers keep getting bigger. And then you start to say, what if we're doing this across the entire country at the same kind of rate? Again, we're doing more. And so we see this, the research really talks about kind of what's out there and what we can get. And then we start to talk about how we can actually get there. And so how VCs can think about diversifying their portfolios through their internal makeups, but also how they make those decisions and what relationships they have in order to find founders of color and women. We also talk about how LPs can also be helpful with respect to helping emerging managers, because generally speaking, managers, emerging managers have, relationships that would be a little bit different from what you're seeing in the mainstream space as well. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it is kind of just saying, okay, here's what it is, here's how we can do it, here's what it is if we do it again, reminder, and then we go from there.
Thank you. And tell us a little bit about maybe one or two of the successes.
Yes.
That'd be great.
So a couple of success stories that we can think about. We've had 3 exits in our lab portfolio already, and 2 of them were relationships that we had come about. So when we did our first cohort ever in 2017, we did a press release, mentioned who the companies were in our lab, and one of them got acquired 8 weeks later because of the press release. And so they were acquired by a more well-funded startup who then said, oh, this is exactly what we want to do, looked at the tech, and we had, an acquisition right out the gate, which was really eye-opening for us about, again, the power of a firm like Morgan Stanley putting their resources behind these founders and what the outcomes would be. We had another founder most recently in our 2020 cohort, so the first COVID cohort, just out of school, Stanford Business grad. It's a platform that's looking to do kind of training and uses virtual reality to augment that type of training for employees in the enterprise. And just out of business school, took the founder on because they had some really interesting pilots that they had done, and they were looking to do funding and looking for funding. And so one of their investors now, which is Norwest, was kind of sitting on the sidelines. And then they got accepted into the lab. And they were like, oh, this is interesting. And then we spoke with one of the partners at Norwest, and then they got investment. And that investment allowed them to upsize their round. So they actually doubled the amount of money that they took in. And it also happened that with respect to diversity and then George Floyd, that also was helpful for them as well. But the Norwest investment was really a catalyst for them to close their funding round. And so that was excellent. This company now has taken off. They've raised 15 million, so they went from year one kind of just 3, and then they raised 15. Their valuation increased 5 times. They are really on their way. And Morgan Stanley is doing a pilot. Hopefully they'll become a full client. So that's kind of where that really works really well. And so those are just a couple of the success stories that we're talking about.
That's awesome. So how do you, once people finish kind of the cohort process, what types of support are you offering them to sort of continue that catapult level?
That's such a great question, Sarah. And so one of the things that we do is we go on these companies' cap tables, so we are investors. So we stay with the company past graduation, which I think is actually really important. When corporate is looking to have some of these classes, it's not like see you later and like good luck, right? As a matter of fact, our founders are like, we're leaving, like what's gonna happen? It's like, calm down. You know, you might even still have office space, like relax, and then they don't see it until like after like, oh, okay. And so they take a big breath, but we stay with them. And so to the extent we can be helpful with anything, including additional investor introductions, now that we have the Next Level Fund, some of the founders can be introduced to our fund, and we can go ahead and help with an investment there. But also, are there things you need at Morgan Stanley, subject matter expertise? Can we tap our client base? Can we introduce you to the next company? I'm actually introducing one of our portfolio companies in 2 cohorts ago to P&G because now they're at a level where they can speak to them. So it really is a beneficial relationship going forward. And I think it's very important for us to remember that just because they leave and graduate from this program, it doesn't mean that they still don't need more help.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we look at, the future of this project that you're working on, I heard you were expanding in London. Where do you see this going, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And what do you think some of the results will end up being?
So there are a couple of ways I think about this. So for the Multicultural Innovation Lab, we've opened up an office in London for our EMEA, for the EMEA region. We also are looking at different hubs now in terms of there are pockets, obviously, in Tel Aviv. We have an office there. We have offices in Hong Kong, Tokyo. There are lots of worldwide offices where we can start to attack or prosecute the same opportunities with respect to early stage funding for founders, which is awesome because this really goes into the fund. And so the fund was really born out of the success of the lab. Like our partners, like, can we do more? We're like, of course we can do more. And we can obviously help you do that. And we also will grow the fund. So Fund 1 is LP corporate base, but Fund 2 and beyond will open up to traditional investor corporate bases, including family offices, foundations, high net worth individuals, obviously institutional investors and corporates. And so we really want to expand this because we do believe that, now this is where this gets a little geeky, so just bear with me for 1 second. We do believe that all we're doing, Sarah, is pushing 2 curves together. So if we believe in the law of normal distribution, and you believe that all populations are distributed normally, and that's a bell curve, that means that folks who've been getting this type of funding are in one bell curve here. The rest of the universe is in one bell curve here. We're pushing those bell curves together, which means that in the VC space, if you're looking to get all your returns out of that first standard deviation, when you push those 2 curves together, there are outsized returns in this group that are going to exceed that group. It's math. And we think that because this group has been overlooked for so long, that we're gonna have disproportionate outsized returns. And so it's really almost a golden era. And by the way, Wellington setting up a fund like this, there are a lot of folks looking to attack this opportunity because the returns could be astronomical. What does that mean? That means then the money's gonna flow. We're going to level this kind of playing field. And then when I'm fighting with Kleiner Perkins about doing a deal or trying to get a founder to choose between the 2 of us, then you've kind of hit stasis, which is great. When that actually happens, hopefully sooner rather than later, but that really is the point. And then we're at a place where the probability of being a unicorn is not skewed or favored in any particular direction, and that'd be a great thing.
Yeah, no, that would be amazing. So we have a couple minutes left. I want to open it up to questions. If anybody in the audience has a question for Alice. We have 2.
Good morning, Alice.
Morning.
Is this on? Yeah.
I can hear you.
So talk a little bit more about some of the other successes. I think there's only been 50 or 60 in the Cultural Innovation Lab, but my understanding is they've raised a couple $100 million or 150 million since. And so you've talked about some individuals, but more broadly.
Yeah, the companies in the lab, we've had 3 exits. We're about to have a 4th. So looking at almost 4 exits. And what we're really proud about is that in total, the companies have raised over $150 million, which is great. And from a valuation perspective, we're over $500 million in valuation. So that's fantastic. I mean, again, some of the companies have phased out and done other things, but when they win, they're winning. And again, if you look at kind of what we've had, I think we've had maybe 2 or 3 go to zero of 70. And so investors are like, this is actually unbelievable. We're like, this is part of the hypothesis we're trying to prove out. And even in our next level fund portfolio, we're at 10, and they're in great shape. And so we've got a couple, literally 2, that we're looking a little shaky, but 8 are on their way. And people are like, okay, interesting. Early days, but very interesting. And that's kind of the point. If we had 5 unicorns in the fund, and we're looking at probably a portfolio size of maybe 20, 25, if we had 5 companies or 6 companies hit unicorn status out of 25, people would be like, you guys are geniuses. It's like, yes. No, I'm just kidding. But it's the point of the curves. Like, if the whole point of the VC investment thesis is to look at the entire universe and pick the best ones, we're saying you guys are missing half the universe, at least, right? And so that's what we're trying to prove out. So that's what we hope. And so I hope that's helpful. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know if we have time for one more question in the very back.
I'll make it quick.
I can just shout it really quickly. Fascinating remarks. Thank you. I was just curious, how much of for both the program and the fund is your selection criteria about furthering Morgan Stanley's core business strategy versus other items on the agenda?
That's an excellent question. Not at all. And so we are not a traditional corporate VC where we have to have some business, and we have kind of an arm for that does strategic investments, which works with us well, but not at all. So we're sector agnostic on both sides. With the fund, we're looking for some adjacencies with the corporates, but it does not preclude investment, but it's helpful. And so, and that's in any sector that they're interested in. So if they want to do some deep tech play, we would look at a deep tech, play, because that actually makes sense. But it is not a gating item for any founder. So totally open for business. Thank you for asking the question. Sector agnostic. If you have a company that's kind of, 1 million plus ARR, looking to raise, a couple million or so, we can lead, we can follow on the fund. And then, like I said, pre-seed, seed, 250 on the lab.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being with us
Thank
today.
you.
Can we join in a round of applause for Alice? Thank you.